Hello, everybody. This is Paul Speciale. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Scality, and it's time for another one of our podcast episodes where we talk about interesting and pertinent topics in the tech industry and the storage industry specifically. I'm joined, as usual, by my colleague and CTO and founder of Scality, Giorgio. How are you, Giorgio?
Great. How are you doing, Paul?
Very well. I'm eager to get to another very good topic for us. So why don't we roll forward and we can see what we want to hit today. And I think it's something that's very much on the minds of a lot of storage buyers, even CIOs. And if you roll forward to the next slide, this is really all about what's happening in our industry from a media and technology component pricing perspective. This is something that's not just this year, it's already been occurring for a year or so. Really, we've had a disruption in the supply chain that has resulted in a lot of pricing increases. It focuses a lot on storage media, but of course, not just isolated to that. The reason you and I both know and the industry knows it's because there's a huge usage in AI. And that means that concentration of usage is really restricting the supply, it's consuming it, and hence leading to all of these changes in pricing. So that's what we want to talk about, and then kind of turn the discussion a little bit more into how can we address that? Is there a better way? Is there a way to navigate these issues going forward? So let's move forward and maybe to just level set everybody. Certainly, as I said, this is a general kind of industry issue, the pricing, the supply chain. We want to focus a little bit on flash, NAND flash. And if you look at some of the analyst writings today, we're really kind of in this AI-driven super cycle, right? It's kind of reshaping the whole dynamic and the whole economics. Um, if you look at analyst groups like Gartner, they will tell you that they are still forecasting big price increases this year for NAND flash, still expecting 200% or more increases. That is on top of what was already seen last year, which was up to 80% price surges. And all of this is happening at the same time as the supply chain, the lead time for ordering systems, servers, getting the disk drives themselves, the flash drives. It's leading people to wonder, can they get them, right? And 6 to 9 to 12 month lead times are certainly being experienced by people widely. This isn't ending. You and I actually had a conversation with a really, really smart analyst at Gartner, and he told us this is going to endure through 2027. Flash is going to be very premium. It's going to stay scarce. And even after 2027, we're still going to deal with it at some level, perhaps not at the levels of
Yeah.
today.
And I
Uh,
have two
yeah,
comments. First of all,
please.
it's a beautiful slide. Did you use Cloud Code for this
Of
one?
course I did. Of course
Oh,
I did.
yeah, I can
Yeah.
see it because it's
It
like,
has the pattern of Claude Code,
yeah,
doesn't it?
it's nice, not too much text, a lot of white space. So I love
Yes.
it. Um, yeah, so the expert at Gartner, they also told us that QLC, which is the high density flash, was also the one that has the most pressure in terms of shortage because they
Interesting.
don't make that much of it, right?
Right, right. Yeah, and it's down to what, 3 vendors, right? Isn't that right?
Yeah, and one of them had issues with factories that were not online, and that just takes time. Right? So he said
Exactly.
at least until 2026 and maybe more.
Yeah, we really got an immersion in that industry from that briefing, and I mean, we knew some of it, but the details were incredible, right? And the cost of setting up another fab, the time of setting up another fab. There's no quick solution here, right? So we're all gonna have to deal with it. All right, so I think we get the idea, and people I'm sure have heard about this. We just wanted to give some specifics. Let's go forward and I think tie it a little bit more into what's happening over the last years in the storage industry. I think it's fair to say that for many vendors and many offerings and many customers, the default now is to think I have to deploy all flash, right? Many modern storage vendors depend on it. They've designed their systems to be dependent on all flash. And really, if you think about it, if they're going to deliver any kind of performance, it's not going to be possible on hard disk drives, right? They're going to really require flash media. So what does that mean? It means if you have data that's hot, warm, or cold, it doesn't matter, right? Because it's all going to get the same penalty, right? It's all going to have to sit on the same kind of premium tier of everything. I mean, this is obvious. Do you see it the same way?
Yeah, that's what we've been hearing for the loudest from the loudest vendors.
Right. Right. So it's certainly the case. I mean, it's all over all of the industry. I think for us, we believe that you have to start thinking more about workloads. And I think that's where we want to go and really think about the workload dynamic. So why don't we roll forward one more? So I think our basic thesis is this, right? Not every workload needs all flash. You can be more optimized. You can match the media to the workload. And that means there can be an optimal blend, right? You have hot workloads. You have latency sensitive workloads. You have read intensive workloads. Certainly that's where flash might apply or will apply. But then the bulk of things that we see, right? I mean, for analytics and data lakes and archives, HDD does exceptional work. It gives great performance. There's really no reason to abandon it. And you remember we looked at public cloud storage. The bulk of that is still on HDD, right?
Yeah.
The amount of data that gets stored on flash is still pretty minimal. But now we have to also think about this kind of cold tier. We're all going to start retaining, exabytes of data at some point. Do you really want that cold data on flash? Do you want it on HDD? Or can we start thinking about some colder media like tape, right? So this is the thinking, right? The thesis is we need to be more intelligent about what workload deserves what media.
Yeah. And to be clear, as CTO, I love Flash, right? And I'd be happier if my customer were only on Flash, because that means I can sleep better at night, in terms of the guaranteed performance and the durability. Now, that's not real life, right?
Hmm.
The cost, as we'll see in the calculator, is such that long-term storage has to go on a different media, even if it wasn't a shortage, just for economics reason. And that's why look at Amazon, Google, Facebook, as you said, they still deploy hard drives for the long tail capacities, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And we're doing the same. And that's where our expertise in HDDs and cold storage is a lot of value to our customers because we know how to manage disk failures, we know how to route around disk issues, and that's years and years of experience, right?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought it up because we certainly don't want to portray all flash as bad or evil or the wrong way, right? We have to embrace it. We do embrace it, and for the right workloads, it certainly makes sense. So the way you stated it was correct. Well, shall we look at some actual scenarios and see how
Yeah,
we might project scenarios and TCO over the different media types?
yeah. So let me try to share a different tab. Can you see this?
I can. I can. I
Okay.
see a nice, colorful calculator type interface.
Perfect. So let me explain this. On the left side, you see the 100% flash solution. And right now, it's only using TLC flash in the simulator. On the right side, you have a hybrid solution based on Scality, where we use a mix of flash, HDD, and tape. And in the middle, you see the mix, right?
Hmm.
And we preceded the engine on use cases. So on backup, it will start with 10% flash, 50% HDD, and 40% tape because you can afford to use cold in terms of latencies for backup. Then if you go to the AI data lake, the simulator automatically changes to more flash to fit the GPUs, right? And no tape because tape has no place in the high performance AI. And then you see HDD at 65%. And for cloud, so cloud, we can define it as a services. You render online, it could be an email service, it could be archival service, it could be a video surveillance service. And we defaulted to 10% tape. Right, and 20% flash. And then you can also go custom and pick whatever value you want, and also scale the capacity, and we made it go to 10 exabyte because that's a reality for some of our prospects and customers.
Mhm.
But we can go as low as 1 petabyte if you wanted to do the comparison.
Yeah, it's super valuable. Can I ask you a question on backup? It might surprise some people to see the need for flash there, but makes sense, huh? These days for fast restore.
Fast restore. Sometimes you need some buffer ingest thing happening. Also with tape, you want to buffer after reading or writing to tape, so you get a little bit of flash. If I remove tape from the backup and use HDD, I think we can go safely to 10% flash. Mixing both gives you a big economics already, right?
Well,
Mixing
let's
a
take a look
flash
at
and
that. So
write.
it's something like 1.87 million, and that's a 5-year TCO for
TCO.
10 peta, right? And if the minute we can do a 1090 split, we're looking at 83% lower.
Yeah. So
So
1.54 million saved. So it's 5 years. And we also add 20% overall cost to uh, to look at the total cost of ownership.
yeah, that's a
It's not
fair.
just the cost of the actual flash. If I go to 20%, which might be realistic, right?
Yeah,
You see already 1.37 million savings.
right. And you again, you assumed that the flash tier was TLC in this scenario.
Yes, and so when I showed this calculator to our CEO, to our product management, to you, to other people, everybody has an opinion. And so I decided to make it easy for now, and we is going to evolve based on the viewers' feedback. So if anybody wants to see something different, so I have
Mhm.
an idea where I would pick between TLC and Q. Data lake would be TLC, and if you do a backup, it will actually be QLC because I think it's safe to use QLC for backup use
Yeah,
cases. And cloud will be a mix. And then in custom, you'll be able to decide how much TLC or QLC you want to use.
right.
And this way, I think it's going to be more precise.
Yeah. And
And there's
Giorgio,
other ideas, and I would love to get some feedback and move that in the right direction.
okay, that's a great idea. I think you and I chatted about this, and it's roughly an order of magnitude price per terabyte higher for flash than HDD. Is
Yes.
that right? Okay.
Yes. And so that's one aspect. The other aspect is, can you actually buy it?
And you have to buy it.
Because maybe you have enough money to spend,
Right.
but it's not going to be in your data center on time.
Okay. All right. So huge considerations, right? So it's not only the ability to deliver the performance the workload needs, but can you even get the media and in
Yeah.
what meaningful time frame?
But in your opinion, what would be a nice scenario to model right now?
I think you're talking about use case modeling or the various media types.
The capacity and use case. Yeah.
Yeah, I think if we look at, workloads today, you have cloud. I mean, some of those clouds that we're seeing are obviously into the hundreds of petabytes. Why don't we think about something at maybe 500 peta? Can you get
Okay.
the calculator to go there?
Faster,
There we
please.
go. Okay, so 500 petabytes. In a cloud scenario, could we go with 20, 70, 10, or could we even say tape is a larger component because the data is going to age?
So let's say part of your service is archiving,
Yeah.
and you need a copy of everything on a different data center.
Mm-hmm.
Then we could go same capacity for HDD and tape.
Okay.
That makes sense?
Yeah, so now we have 20, 40, 40. And again, you're modeling a 5-year TCO. So now we're looking at just under $100 million TCO for the all flash.
Yes.
And we're seriously down to under 25 million, under 23 million for the
Of a
blended
blended
deployment.
TCO.
Yeah. Okay, that's striking. Obviously, we used a larger example. It made sense for cloud,
Yeah.
but the delta
So
is going
think
to exist.
of a bank, that's centralizing services for all the branch offices.
Yeah,
So they operate as their own cloud.
right.
So 20% flash, that makes sense. They must have some high performance use cases in
They
there.
must. Yeah.
And then HDD as the main target. And maybe for regulatory reason, they need to have a copy offline on a different data center using a different technology.
Mm-hmm.
With SEC compliance,
Yes, that's right.
like our co-asset certification.
Mm-hmm.
That would mean the same amount of capacity has to be on tape as well.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
why I modeled this one.
it correlates, right? I mean, we have a customer with 2,500 applications on a single instance in a bank.
Mhm.
And you're right, for all these regulatory reasons, it makes total sense to have think about these kind of capacities
Yeah.
and the workload mix that you talked about or the media mix. Okay, that's great. So really what we're looking for is feedback on where we can take this next and allow people to kind of play with the scenarios and glean the possible advantages of it.
Yeah. And I'm fully aware that it looks maybe more savings than reality because of the reliance on TLC only flash on the left side.
Mhm.
So that's for sure something I'm going to change. But I'm open to any feedback, any constructive way to make this more useful for people.
Okay. From my perspective, it's useful already in the fact that you've ranged the capacities widely from petabyte to exabyte. You have multiple different workloads types, and then obviously the custom one lets me play with the ratios anywhere I
Yeah.
want.
Oh, and by the way, something surprising. I looked at a lot of prices, right, to build this, and also looked at our product management team for prices. QLC is not that much cheaper,
Hmm.
It's 40% cheaper
40% cheaper than TLC.
than TLC,
Okay.
the flash, but it's not 10 times less, right?
Yeah, that's right.
It's not that much saving. So
Okay.
you really want to make sure that the use case can use QLC. So if it's not read intensive, it might be a bad idea, right?
Yeah. That's interesting because you would have thought maybe more like an order of magnitude difference, but it's not that at all.
It's not, no, I was
Okay.
expecting more.
Okay. That's really interesting. And then the availability of the two different types obviously might vary.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. This is great, Giorgio. I appreciate the chat and the look at the calculator. And I think we can refine it based on what we hear and come back and
So
talk about
what's
this again.
the best way for people to interact with us?
Well, I think the best thing they can do is chime in immediately on the YouTube channel. We can interact there. We'd love to receive your comments. We post these podcasts there. Obviously, people can ask questions. We can reply. So that's one vehicle. But there's also ways to contact us through the Scality website. So go to www.scality.com and contact us through chat, or there's an email address. We'll take it all, and Giorgio and I will be very responsive to that.
Great.
All right. I appreciate the chat, Giorgio. We'll pick it up soon again and be back with another podcast. So thank you all for watching.
Thank you.